The Evening Standard. Saturday, August 23rd. His Holiness, the Khalifatul-Masih, the head of the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam, who has arrived in London with about a dozen secretaries, is now installed in a suite of rooms at Chesham Place, Belgrave Square. He explained the object of his mission westward.
I will remain in this country for about 9 weeks. I left Qadian on the 12th of July. Here I propose to take the opportunity, prior to the Wembley Conference, to convene a preliminary conference of religious thinkers and those interested in social and political problems in order to ascertain how far religion might affect those aspects of men's lives.
I saw in a vision that I was standing on a pulpit in the city of London and was setting forth the truth of Islam in the English language in a very well-reasoned address.
I'm on a journey travelling across the UK, following in the footsteps of the second successor to the promised Messiah, peace be upon him, and his great travels across this shore. William Loftus Hare suggested to hold a conference of world religions here in London. The purpose of this conference was to get religious representatives from around the British Empire to come together under the umbrella of peace and tolerance and understanding each other's message. The Imperial Institute was chosen for the conference to be held, and the event was scheduled for the 22nd of September to the 3rd of October 1924. His Holiness Mirza Bashir Uddin Mahmood Ahmad, may Allah be pleased with him, was invited to this event by the organising committee, and he readily accepted the invitation and began his preparations for this great historic journey. The journey was to span over many months and many cities. Firstly, Hazur went to the Middle East, then after he came to Rome and Paris before coming to London. Hazur entered the UK through the port of Dover. The 4 p.m. train was booked by Thomas Cook, and it was to arrive at London sharp at 6:15 p.m. One of the first stops on Hazur's tour in London was the St. Paul's Cathedral. This is one of the most iconic structures in the city. A large crowd gathered at London Victoria Station to receive Hazur, and media representatives from around the world came to report on a Muslim leader coming to the UK. St. Paul's Cathedral is 111 metres tall and sits at Ludgate Hill. Here Hazur stood at the bottom of these steps in St. Paul's Cathedral and led a very long silent prayer with his entourage. It must have been an intriguing sight for Londoners here in the city to see a Muslim prayer being delivered at the bottom of this great cathedral. In the evening, Hazur arrived here at 6 Chesham Place. At that time, this was a residential area, but as you can see behind me, it's now the German embassy. Hazur came here to stay, and this was his accommodation for the next few days, living in the heart of London. Abdul Rahman Qadiani, may Allah be pleased with him, who was with Hazur for the entire tour, shared some very valuable details and interesting facts about Hazur here in London. He narrates,
London is such a big city that it is very difficult to say where it starts and where it ends. It has a population of 70,000, miles upon miles of gardens, picnic spots, and entertainment hubs have been erected within the city. Rivers and lakes stem out from within it. The overground and underground trains come and go every other minute. There are dozens of stations and junctions. Thousands of buses are constantly moving around the city.
Hazur's schedule was extremely busy. He was staying here on the top floor of 6 Chesham Place, and he'd only come down for meals or to meet visitors. So during the day, the majority of Hazur's time would be spent writing the speeches that were to be delivered in Brighton, Portsmouth, and the world-famous Wembley Conference. Media representatives and journalists would come here to Chesham Place to meet Hazur almost every day. Hazur would take the time out of his busy schedule to sit with them and explain the true teachings of Islam. This was very important to Hazur's mission, as it was to explain Islam to the Western world. We're here at the very famous Serpentine Lake. This lake cuts right across London, and Hazur used to walk in the evening with his entourage. And sometimes he used to walk so fast that even his entourage couldn't keep up with him. As the leader of the Ahmadiyya community, Hazur spent hours here in central London speaking to many local new converts to Islam.
Today, many people came to have an audience with Hazur, and, despite not feeling too well, Hazur granted them an audience and preached the message of Islam. Hazur spent a great deal of time preaching and guiding Miss Dean and her sister before taking the oath of initiation. Hazur believes that in these Western countries, Islam will spread at a rapid pace through women.
The mission had only been recently established here in the city of London, so at that time they needed their spiritual father. Hazur committed a lot of time to training the local members of the Jamaat here in London and also sharing with them his divine spiritual knowledge. There were many meetings here held in the heart of London with local members from the community, and at that time, due to the lack of funds, it was suggested that the mission be closed for a few years. However, under Hazur's divine leadership, he carried on going forward, and because of that, the great Fuzzle Mosque is in existence today. On the 19th of October 1924, Hazrat Ahmad laid the foundation stone for the Fuzzle Mosque here in London. This was a historic moment in the city because it was the first mosque ever built here, so it attracted a lot of media attention at that time. Because of this mosque being built here in this city, many English men and women converted to Islam Ahmadiyyat, fulfilling the prophecy of the promised Messiah, peace be upon him, that Islam will be spread to the West. Later, at the inauguration of this mosque, many leaders came from around the world to show their support that Islam has been brought to the UK. So it was right here in 1924 when Hazrat Ahmad laid the foundation stone for the Fuzzle Mosque here in London. And it says here in front of me, to seek the pleasure of God so that His name be glorified in London and that the people of this country may also partake of the blessings which have been vouchsafed to us. On this leg of the tour, Hazur visited Brighton. Brighton is renowned for its tourist attractions and also its very diverse communities. Hazur was invited to Brighton to deliver an address on Islam to the local community there. So we're here at Brighton Station. This is actually about a 1-hour journey from London, and Hazur actually took the train from London Victoria straight to Brighton. From Brighton Station, Hazur was escorted directly here to the Chhatri Memorial. This memorial sits up in the hills of Brighton, and it took Hazur about half an hour through the farms and through the mud that we can see in front of me to get here to this site. This memorial is in honor of the fallen Indian soldiers during the war, and it represents their bravery, loyalty, and sacrifice to their country. Hazur walked up these steps at the memorial with his entourage and members of the local community here in Brighton and led a silent prayer for all those soldiers during the war that fought and sacrificed their lives for their country.
Hazur stood at this memorial and explained how and what we can pray for. Hazur then lifted his hands and led all Khuddam in silent prayer. Filmmakers and others continue to circle us, taking videos and pictures.
We're here at the very famous Brighton Beach. This beach is very different from other beaches you see across the world, because as you can see in front of me, it's not sand but cobbled stones that is here on this beach. Hazrat Muslim Maud stopped here and took a quick stroll across this beach when he came in 1924. And although it's empty now, at that time it must have been packed with tourists who were here on their summer vacations. Hazur was asked to deliver a speech in Portsmouth at one of the most famous cathedrals in that area, and at that time it must have been very different to see the Muslim perspective in the UK. However, Hazur worked well into the night with Sir Chaudhry Zafrullah Khan translating the speech from Urdu to English, and as that speech was so well received in Portsmouth, Hazur decided to publish the address under the name A Message from Heaven.
Hazur came for the morning prayer and had breakfast at 8:30. Hazur and the entourage have boarded the 10 a.m. train, which will arrive in Portsmouth and arrive around 11 or 12 o'clock. It has been decided that they will stay the night there and will return on the afternoon of the 15th.
Due to the lack of resources at that time, only a few members of Hazur's entourage could accompany him on this leg of the tour. These members included Sir Zafrullah Khan, Maulvi Muhammaddin, Maulvi Abdur Rahim, Mr. Irfani, and Dr. Hashmatullah. One of the main reasons for Hazur's visit here to Portsmouth was that he was asked to speak at one of the main cathedrals here in the city. At 6 p.m. on the 14th of September 1924, the priest came and introduced Hazur in the most befitting and respectful way. Then Hazur came to the podium and Hazur started his address. For the first 10 minutes, Hazur gave an introduction to the topic, and then for an hour, Hazur addressed the large crowd in front of him. By the end of the speech, the audience were not only captivated but also engaged in the way that Hazur expressed his depth of knowledge on so many different topics and also the mastery of language that he used.
The lecture was so majestic that it should be published in the millions. The lecture had such a profound effect on people, it was as if the audience had become spellbound, listening to the lecture with calmness and great attention and admiration. It was extremely magnetic, extraordinarily interesting, and a treasure of spiritual knowledge.
After the speech was delivered, Hazur went to a hotel here locally in Portsmouth and sat with many local converts to Islam. He answered their questions and also showed them a lot of love and affection. As we can see, Hazur's schedule was so busy and not a moment was wasted on his travels. Over the course of the journey, Hazur will spend a lot of time preparing for the speech which was to be held here in London. Despite his frail health, Hazur will spend day and night researching, planning and preparing for this great speech. Even though Hazrat travelled to a variety of cities across the UK and met various people, he still found time to write a 92-page speech just for London. However, the allocated time of only 1.5 hours meant that Hazrat had to shorten his speech to just 60 pages. But the original 92-page speech was published later on under the name Ahmadiyyat, or the True Islam. However, the abridged version, which was read out during the conference, was also published later on under the name the Ahmadiyya Movement. Then came the day, the 23rd of September 1924, and the fulfillment of a grand prophecy.
I saw in a vision that I was standing on a pulpit in the city of London and was setting forth the truth of Islam in the English language, in a very well-reasoned address.
The lecture was to be delivered at 5 p.m. sharp in London. The hall that was only half full had been listening to lectures for over 2.5 hours. Sir Theodore Mersin, who was presiding the conference, announced the next speaker, Mirza Bashir Mahmood Ahmad, head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the promised son and second successor to the promised Messiah, peace be upon him.
An incident that caused excitement in the conference took place when a new sect of Islam was mentioned.
Within a few moments, the hall was packed from top to bottom, and those that had dozed off became fully alert.
A person from India, wearing a white turban, with a radiant, pleasant face, sporting a black beard, and whose title is His Holiness Khalifatul-Masih Al-Hajj Mirza Bashir Mahmood Ahmad, or for short, Khalifatul-Masih, presented the aforementioned challenge in his treatise, which was entitled Ahmadiyya Movement in Islam.
Hazrat stepped up to the podium and said,
Mr. President, sisters and brothers, first and foremost, I thank God, who put in the hearts of the organizers of the conference that people should reflect in this manner on the subject of religion, and after listening to speeches on different religions, see which religion should be accepted. I now ask my follower, Chaudhry Zafarullah Khan Sahib, Bar at Law, to read my treatise. I am not accustomed to reading in this manner, even in my own language, because my speeches are always extempore, and I can speak for up to 6 hours. The subject of religion does not conclude here in this world. Rather, after death, it moves on to the next world, and man's eternal happiness is associated with faith. Therefore, reflect and ponder over this. I hope you will listen attentively.
Sir Chaudhry Zafarullah Khan read the lecture in a commanding tone, which lasted an hour. Hazur said, although it was Sir Chaudhry Zafarullah Khan who read the treatise, it was my tongue speaking it. It was reported that during the address, the audience were in a trance-like state, listening to the Khalifa. At the end of the address, people were at the edge of their seat, enthusiastic, and there was a long applause. The President congratulated Hazrat Muslim Maud on the success of the lecture and said it was the best among those read on that day. After the conference, Sir Theodore Mersin repeatedly praised this treatise while he stood on the stage in front of everyone. The conference secretary said she overheard someone saying that His Holiness was the Luther of our age. The vision of the promised Messiah, peace be upon him, that was fulfilled by Mirza Bashir Mahmood Ahmad is being fulfilled in new dimensions in the name of Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the fifth successor of the promised Messiah. On the 11th of February 2014, His Holiness delivered a magnificent lecture at the historic Conference of World Religions. But that is just to name one in numerous occasions that he has addressed the world from a pulpit in London. And it doesn't stop there. As you can see, from 1924 to 2018, the community here in the UK has grown from strength to strength. Not only has this message of Islam been brought to the West through these great speeches, but now through the media, through TV, newspapers and television, the beauties and excellences of Islam has been portrayed. And now the fifth successor to the promised Messiah, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad, is pushing every day to spread Islam to the West here in the UK.